Sandhan. All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.
Hello students all over Gujarat. I, Professor Chetan Mewada from HA College of Commerce, along with Dr. Jean D'Souza, welcome you at BISEC Studio under the banner of English Special Language Series program. Today, we are going to have some kind of interaction on the topic Aristotle. Those who are familiar with English language and literature, they know it very well that the contribution made by two giants in the field of literature is remarkable. If you go in the field of literature, then you must remember Shakespeare. And if you want to talk about criticism, you cannot miss out Aristotle. So today, the topic is Aristotle. If you have to start something about Aristotle, the problem starts how to introduce him. But we can say, after his contribution, that he was a scientist, he was a physician, he was a zoologist. But most importantly, for people like you and me, is to evaluate, talk and discuss about Aristotle from literature point of view, from criticism point of view. Let us start something from introduction point of view, maybe some biographical sketches of Aristotle. You will see on the screen, my dear friends. See the presentation. Aristotle, his period is 384 to 322. Students, take care. BC, he was born before Christ. 384 to 322. Some more detail will be there in the next slide. Where he was? He was in Athens, Greece. Aristotle came to Athens only with the purpose of study like you. And you know who was his teacher? Who was his guru? A master, maybe more powerful than Aristotle, Plato. Under Plato, he studied. And what was the age? Similar to your age, that was the starting point. He started at the age of 18, and for a period of 20 years, he studied at the place called, next slide, please pay attention. Around 340 BC, when he was over 40, Aristotle returned to his home after completing his studies at Plato's Institute. When Plato died, he was not happy with the happenings at the institute. So he left the place at the age of 40 to his place, Stagiaria, and he became tutor. He was basically, his insight, his aptitude was towards teaching. So he decided to continue his teaching. And he became the tutor of king's son, who would later become Alexander the Great. Before we move to the next slide, I am happy to introduce, you will see the guest of the today, Dr. Jean D'Souza, who has been working as Associate Professor at HA College of Commerce, Ahmedabad. Her area of interest is English literature and language. She has completed her PhD in literature. May I request Madam to go ahead and enlighten our students with more insight on. Hello, Madam.
Hello, sir. Thank you, Dr. Mewada. And I'm happy to be here to talk about Aristotle. Aristotle, importantly, was a student of Plato. And as you can see with many great students and many great teachers, it is enough for us to know that he was a student of Plato. If there was no other information available on Aristotle except that he was a student of Plato, that too would have been enough. But of course, we know that Aristotle went on to be the man behind Alexander the Great, the great emperor of Greece, who came right up till India. I'm sure you've heard of Sikandar. As you can see in the slide, Aristotle was the teacher of Plato. Aristotle was the teacher of Alexander.
So I think in this slide on the left side, probably on the screen.
Yes.
So for students, it is the right side.
Yes.
So it is a picture of Alexander.
Alexander.
And on the left side, we have a view of Aristotle.
Aristotle. The one with the gold clothes, with the gold border on his clothes, is the king's son, obviously.
Okay.
A prince would be dressed in gold. And what the clothes that Aristotle is wearing is the typical clothes of a Greek learned man. That's how they used to dress at the time. And it was his philosophies and ideas that Alexander carried with him as he went across the world to conquer the whole world.
He carried on his researches. He was specially interested in geology. As in the introduction, I have already said to you, my dear students, that he was a multifaceted personality. And he was interested in geology. That was his area of interest. And he was visiting various places. In 335 BC, after leaving Plato's institute, he founded his own philosophical school. The name, it is on your screen, the Lyceum. He was the teacher there. This school he established, probably we can say, world's first research library, where actually research activity was taken with lot of care and sincerity. It was also the place where he and his pupils, remember one of the students was Alexander too, carried on research in zoology, botany, biology, physics, political science, ethics, logic, music and mathematics. You can see, students, on your screen, madam, that number of areas where he acquired mastery. Aristotle acquired mastery. But as I told you, that our concern is to evaluate Aristotle from literature point of view, from criticism point of view. Would you say the important aspect for our students, or let us evaluate Aristotle from literature or critic point of view?
Yes, Aristotle, as you can see, had a variety of interests, and at the Lyceum, all these interests combined together to create an atmosphere and an environment of learning. And it is at this institute, which was similar to Plato's, the academy that Plato had set up, similar to the academy, this institute also created a sense of multicultural, multifaceted learning.
So, the scope of Aristotle's written work, philosophical and scientific, is immense. You cannot count it. But the students of English language and literature knows him for one of the masterpieces of English criticism, the Poetics. As it is written, displayed, presented on your screen, that it was written by Aristotle, and that was the first systematic work of literary criticism in our tradition. So many people made an attempt to criticize various literary pieces, but probably this was the master book in the form of criticism.
Now, what we need to remember, or we need to recap, that Plato had claimed that art is unreal, untrue, and unhealthy. How did he claim that? He said that art is simply an imitation of another imitation. Therefore, it is unreal. What we are looking at is simply shadows. It's not the truth. You remember the theory of the shadows. Plato says that what we are seeing in this world is simply a shadow of the ultimate reality, the realm of ideas and the realm of the particulars. Now, from the realm of ideas, we come into the realm of particulars. So, what you see in the realm of particulars is simply an imitation of the perfect world in the realm of ideas. Therefore, when a poet or an artist recreates something, looking or being inspired by what he sees around him, he is recreating or he is making a copy of something which is already a copy. And because the poet is creating a copy, therefore, according to Plato, art is untrue. It is unreal because it is an imitation of another reality, which is the reality of ideas, or the ideological realm. And because art arouses passion, because art is taking you towards untruth, because art is giving you something which is unreal, therefore, art is unhealthy.
Madam, would you provide some example or few examples to explain this concept to our students?
Yes. Let's say, for example, that a poet is writing about a tree that
Okay.
he looks around. I can see, for example, a banyan tree.
Okay.
And I am feeling the beauty of the banyan tree in my mind, and I want to write a poem about the banyan tree. So I start writing about the banyan tree. I describe the banyan tree in the way it is, and I start writing about it. Now, according to Plato, that banyan tree that I am seeing is an imitation of a perfect tree that exists somewhere else in the realm of ideas.
Fine.
Now, the perfect tree which exists is a tree in general. It does not have a name. It's not a banyan or a peepal or a gulmohar. It's a tree, just a tree. That tree is perfect. That tree is a form of a tree. Now, from that form of a tree, when we come into this world, we get different types of trees. We get the banyan, we get peepal, we get mango, we get neem, or we get different kinds of trees. But these trees are simply imitations of that perfect tree. So when I write a poem, I am writing about an imitation. When I write a poem about a banyan tree, I am writing a poem about an imitation of a perfect tree which exists in the realm of ideas. I cannot see that realm of ideas tree. I can see the banyan tree, which is the shadow, according to Plato, of the real tree which exists in the ideological level.
That is why this term is used, unreal.
Unreal.
Because there is one banyan tree, then there is another banyan tree.
Yes.
And then as a poet, as a writer, you have
I'm
been
creating
writing
a third
something.
tree.
So that is third. So what happened actually with Aristotle? That why did he challenge, or what was his challenge to Plato
Right.
about this theory?
I think we should all, as a literary community, as a community of people who are interested in literature, I think we should all say thank you to Aristotle. Because if Aristotle had not defended art, perhaps art might have been removed from the ideal republic completely, and we would not have any artists, any works of art left to study. But Aristotle came to the defense of art, and he showed through his arguments, through his dialogues, and through his writing, how art is not unreal or untrue or unhealthy.
That means you are also defending the defense of Aristotle with your arguments.
Yes, of course. I like Aristotle because he came to the rescue of art, because art was Plato was almost throwing art out of the Republic.
So
He was-
let us show that line, what is actually said by Aristotle. You can see, students, on your screen that Aristotle defended the theory by saying, see on the screen, art by showing how it is real, true and healthy. Now remember, dear students, earlier it was said unreal, untrue and unhealthy. And Aristotle has something different to say by saying art is real, true and healthy. So it is very interesting now. So we need your help. In fact, even as a teacher of English, sometimes we get confused. So at students level, it is very difficult to understand this concept. So we request, at least I request on behalf of BISEC, to make it so simple and lucid so our students can understand it.
Yeah. So, according to what Aristotle says, that art refers to a higher reality. Art is not a news report. That is the first concept that you need to understand. Okay? Art is not a documentary. Art is something that refers, according to Aristotle, to a higher reality. We are not talking about reproduction exactly of whatever happened in front of us. We are talking about how we are looking at that reproduction, how we are perceiving that particular event that took place. So, art, as you can see on the screen, is not history. It is not the function of the poet to relate what has happened, but what may happen or what is possible according to the law of probability or the law of necessity. When an artist starts writing about that banyan tree that we were talking about, the artist is not going to tell you exactly how many leaves the banyan tree has, or how many branches it has, or how many roots are hanging from its branches. The artist is going to tell you about a reality which is greater than simply the physical reality of that banyan tree. He is going to talk about what he can see possibly inside the banyan tree, what is the feeling of the banyan tree that it arouses within him, and how is that particular tree that he is looking at, how is he perceiving it, how is he relating with it. So it is this kind of art that Aristotle is.
So can I make this kind of statement? Is it appropriate if I say like this, that a report or is based on facts,
Yes.
whereas art is based on fiction? It is
Yes.
more imaginative,
Yes.
and it covers more aspects, and it adds something that is going on in the mind of a writer. He doesn't bother about facts, but he takes care and displays what he believes.
Yes, I would say that art is about perception, according to what Aristotle
Okay.
says. It's about emotion, perception, and that is what creates this kind of a truth. And that's how Aristotle is going to prove in the course of this lecture that art is not unreal, not untrue, and not unhealthy. So, art has a higher subject matter than
The history, it expresses the universal. Students, see on your screen, we develop the theory in the next slide. In other words, it is concerned about the greater, not the particular. Art gives us greater truths of life than those we see in particular forms. Therefore, what Madam said, art, specifically we are focusing on poetry, are real.
So, when we talk about reality, we are talking about certain truths which are greater than the particular truths. We are talking about general truths. Now, what Aristotle believed that was the problem with art forms, was that art was not looking at the form of ideals or the form of ideas. Art was looking only at the particulars. What Aristotle says in contradiction to this theory is that art doesn't talk about particulars in terms of how many branches in the tree or how many flowers on it. Aristotle says that art talks about truths which are greater than simply the tree standing there. Maybe the tree is standing there, yes, but beyond and beside that tree is a certain other emotion that Aristotle says art recreates and reproduces. And therefore, art is real because it talks about reality which is beyond the physical reality that we see around us.
Let us take some example. Take for example, on your screen you can read, my students, Tolstoy's novel Anna Karenina. There was never a woman called Anna Karenina. So, the particulars are not real. That's true. But the statement with which Tolstoy begins his novel is very real. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Madam, what is the connection of this statement with the theory that you were talking about, real and all these
Yes,
things?
this is what Aristotle says. Aristotle says that art might or might not be about the physical reality. So, in the novel, that Tolstoy's novel that he's talking, for example, that you took, Anna Karenina. In Anna Karenina, there was never a woman really in reality
Okay, that's
whose
fine.
name was Anna.
Interesting.
She never existed. She didn't have a story. She didn't have a love life that they show in the novel and so on. But there is a general truth behind this fictional realities that art has created. And what is that general truth? For example, the line that Tolstoy has given at the beginning of the novel, his very first line in the novel is like this: happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own ways. Now, this kind of a statement, this truth that in happiness it all seems alike, but in unhappiness we are all different. My unhappiness would be different from your unhappiness. Your unhappiness would be different from the student's family unhappiness. And in this way, Aristotle shows how art talks about truth. This is the truth that art produces.
That means it is a matter of perception.
It's a matter of
Of
perception.
perception.
So, though it may not be reality in the sense of Anna Karenina's real physical life, it will be a truth in the sense of the statements or the kind of things or the observations that the poet is making about life in general. And this generalness of the truth is what Aristotle shows as the truth of art. So he says that just as Plato said that art is untrue because it's an imitation of an imitation, Aristotle says that art is true because it talks about general truths of life, universal truths of life. It may not talk about a particular truth of life.
One of the important concepts, I think, in Aristotle, if we make it very specifical, now something on poetics, is mimesis. The idea of mimesis was given by Aristotle in the book The Poetics. If we want to define or make it simple to understand what mimesis means, then we can say holding a mirror up to nature. What is the connection now? A work of art reproduces its original not as it is in itself, but as it appears to the senses. Now, probably, madam, we are marching towards the more difficult concept. What is your opinion about this mimesis?
Mimesis is a concept in which the artist, as I said, writes about writes about or presents a certain kind of a reality. Mimesis is the concept in which the work of art reproduces the idea of the original as it appears to the senses. It doesn't have to be physically real. I cannot take the banyan tree in a book and show people the banyan tree, but I can write about the banyan tree as it has appeared or as I have felt about it, as it has appeared to my senses. Now, when I talk about my senses, we are talking about, as you well know, the senses of the sight and the sound and the smell, maybe sometimes even taste and touch. It is as I sense the tree. I am also going to talk about senses which are beyond these five senses. Aristotle talks about some things which are beyond these five senses, and mimesis then is the technique of holding a mirror up to nature in terms of how I perceive it. I, through my art, through my poem, am trying to show that banyan tree to the reader by writing about it. That's what Aristotle is basically
That
saying.
is why it is real.
That is why it is real. It is real.
So that means if we go forward, to hold a mirror up to nature not merely in the documentary sense, to hold a mirror up to nature at 3 levels. Remember, students, these are the 3 important words you will find number of times in the book. They are character, emotion, and logical action. These are the 3 things. They are very important to know. As they are, that is why art is true. So let us have something on character, emotion, and logical action.
Yeah, he calls them in Greek ethos, pathos, and logos,
Okay.
or logical action. But when he talks about it, he says that art holds a mirror up to nature, and not in the sense of how factual it is, but in the sense of how true it is to your own perception, to your own impression of that particular art. And this is what makes art true. And therefore, when Plato said art was unreal and untrue, Aristotle has shown how art is truthful and how art is as real as you can perceive it to be.
So, art is healthy. Another concept, art is healthy because of its cathartic effect. Madam, now I am very conscious, one more new term for our students.
Yes, a
cathartic
very
effect.
interesting term. The basic word that is used in the Greek language is catharsis.
Okay.
And catharsis is also a term which is used in psychology at certain levels. And before we talk about this technical term,
Okay.
I would like to talk about some very interesting things. Do you watch? I'm sure the students watch movies, and sir, I'm sure you too must be watching some movies. Now, if I was to ask you students, did you watch the movie Titanic, let's say?
Okay.
I'm sure everybody has watched it. Sir, did you watch the
Either
movie
in Hindi
Titanic?
version or English version,
Yes.
they must have seen this
They must
movie.
have seen.
So you have taken up a very master example
Yes.
to explain
Now,
the concept.
When you watch this movie, the Titanic, I'm sure all the students and all of us, we already knew that the boat is going to sink. The ship will sink into the ocean, right? And we knew before watching the movie also that Rose and Jack, who were the main characters or the lovers in that movie, will be separated. They will not live happily ever after. But they are going to, Jack will die. Some of us even knew that Jack will die. But in spite of knowing that the movie ends with a tragedy, in spite of knowing that the movie has a sad ending, why did we go to see it? Why did we go to watch it? What makes us go to watch a movie like this when we know that it is going to end?
Maybe
in a
viewers like us might be finding some kind of reflection of their thoughts. Maybe something is going on in their psyche, something that they cannot express directly.
Yes.
They would like to see in those characters, and when they see in that character or those characters, they feel happy and satisfied that there is somebody who is representing us. Something like this is my understanding. I may
You
be
are
wrong.
very
I may be wrong.
you are very close to exactly what we are talking about in terms of catharsis. Aristotle said that there are 2 emotions, and these 2 emotions, according to Aristotle, of course, according to in my opinion, there are more than 2 emotions.
Okay.
But according to Aristotle, he said there are 2 emotions, and he names these emotions as pity and fear. These 2 emotions, he says, are very often suppressed in every human being. They are not allowed to be expressed very often. So when we feel fear or when we feel pity, we generally push it down. We do not like to be soft people. We do not like to allow our feelings to come out every time. So we try to control ourselves to remain calm and to remain dignified and not to feel pity and fear. Now, these emotions which are suppressed, always any suppressed emotion needs an outlet at some point. Where do we get an outlet? We get an outlet, according to Aristotle, when we go to watch or when we experience an art form. Aristotle, my dear students, you must remember, lived in the times of Greek tragedies, when Greek tragedies were at the peak of flourishing. Now, these Greek tragedies, which are very famous, we read some of them even today. These Greek tragedies generally ended with a sad or with a crying ending, or the hero would die, or the heroine would die, or things would not go as you want them to go. And this is when Aristotle thought about this concept of catharsis. And he says that when we go to watch these tragedies, we feel sad, or we feel fearful, or we feel pity for the characters who are acting on stage. Maybe we can connect it with the movies that we watch. We feel the feelings that the characters themselves are feeling. And because we feel these emotions, we are allowing those suppressed emotions to be expressed. And therefore, when these suppressed emotions are expressed, we feel a sense of relief, as Sir has rightly pointed out. So this sense of relief is what is the result of the term catharsis. Catharsis, in very simple language or very simple words, would mean vomiting out. It's like removing something which you have inside you. Okay? Now, when we are talking about expression or vomiting out of suppressed emotions, the cathartic effect of art is what makes art healthy. Aristotle says that when we are dealing with art forms, when we are dealing with works of art like this, like tragedies or unhappy movies that we see, movies that do not have a happy ending, or poems that talk about pain and poems that talk about sadness, then at these times we are basically allowing our suppressed emotions to be expressed. And when these suppressed emotions get an outlet of expression, we feel relief, we feel calm. So after we watch the Titanic, for example, going back to our original example, when we watch this movie, the Titanic, what we are doing is we are feeling frightened when the ship breaks. So our emotion of fear is aroused. We are feeling sad when Jack dies. So our emotion of sadness is aroused. We feel pity for those poor people who have lost their lives in the movie when the ship is sinking. So our emotion of pity is aroused. And all these emotions of sadness and fear and pity are allowed a release within a controlled environment of the movie. If these things were to happen to us in real life, if God forbid, but somebody we loved was to die, then we would not feel the release of pity and fear, because that's not a controlled environment. But when we go to watch a play or when we read a book and these emotions are aroused, then we are allowed to express these emotions in a controlled environment. And because of the controlled environment, these emotions are given a proper release, effective release, and we come back feeling a sense of relief. The kind of feeling that we would feel after we have vomited, for example.
So after listening you, one example is coming in my mind, that it is like let us make it very simple for our students, that it is a situation in a kitchen where there is a pressure cooker. In pressure cooker there is lot of suppressed things are there.
Yes.
And for that outlet there is a whistle.
The whistle.
And in addition to that there is safety valve also. That if these suppressed things do not come out, cooker must not blast.
Yes.
Because it must remain as it was.
Correct.
So that is why there was a safety valve, and cooker will be protected, air will go out of that suppressed air will go out of that. So probably the same kind of things are explained here.
Exactly. That's a very good example. Probably there were no pressure cookers at the time of Aristotle,
Okay.
or else he might have used the analogy. But yes, it is that kind of a release that you feel after you have come out of a movie that like Titanic, or if you've come out from a reading a play which is a tragedy. But the point is that this kind of a release happens in a controlled environment, and therefore, according to Aristotle, art is healthy. It's not unhealthy, as Plato says. Plato said that art was unhealthy because art made people unstable. How did it make people unstable? It aroused emotions. In an ideal republic, you need stable citizens. You do not need unstable, highly sensitive people. According to Aristotle, if people did not arouse their emotions, and if they suppressed them all the time, they would become unstable because they have suppressed their emotions. In fact, the release of emotion is what makes a person stable. Because that is what makes a person healthy. And in this concept of art, and in this defense of art that Aristotle is talking about, he says these things. He says that art is real because it is a matter of a universal reality that art is producing. He says art is true because it's a matter of perceptions that we are talking about. And he says that art is healthy because it's a matter of catharsis. Now, it's a very simple thing that I would like to bring to your mind, students. I'm sure that when you were, let's say for example, imagine that you were 2 years old and you are with your mother in your house, okay, and suddenly at around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the night, you are with your mother alone, you and your mother are alone in the house, and suddenly there is no electricity. The electricity goes off. What do you think you would do? Sir, what do you think a 2-year-old child would do at a time like this?
No doubt about it. First for the safety, or looking for some kind of resources to get some kind of light.
Yes. So the first thing the child would do would be to cry out for its
Yes,
mother.
for some kind of help.
For some kind of help. And as soon as the mother comes, the first thing that the mother would tell the child would be, do not worry. I am here. Do not cry. I am here. Come, let me hold you. Come, let me carry you. I am here. Do not get frightened and do not cry. Now, that child learned this kind of a lesson. Do not cry. Mother is there. Imagine now that you, my dear students, I'm sure you are around 20 years, 19, 20 years of age. Now, at this time, let's imagine another situation of a similar nature. You are sitting in your house and watching a film or watching TV at around 9 o'clock in the night. It just so coincidentally happens that your family, all the people in your house have gone out, and your neighbors are also not around. And because you are alone in the house, you are just going through different channels on the TV, and you come to a channel which is showing a horror film. And you are watching it, it's 9:30 now, people have not come back home, you are alone, and suddenly at 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the night, the electricity goes off. What would the first reaction be? Even if it was a 19-year-old student, sir, what do you think that a student or a teenager of that age would do?
Maybe afraid of the scenario, afraid of the darkness, but he would try to control his suppressed fear.
Yes.
That no, I must not show this kind of fear.
Yes.
Something like
Yes.
that.
So the first, even if you do not want to admit it publicly, I'm sure if you look into yourself, you will realize that your first response to that situation will be, oh no, what has happened? Now, as soon as you said, oh no, you did try and express, your fear did try to come out of your expression.
It was letting out.
It was letting out. But then immediately what did you do? You either put on the mobile so that there is light,
Yes.
or you went to look for a matchstick so that you could light
Or a candle.
Now, as soon as you do this, what have you done to that fear? You have not allowed it to come out. There is no reason to allow it. I'm not saying that you should allow it to come out, but that fear has been pushed inside. Now, this was a small example. Such fear can happen at any point of time. Maybe it can happen when you go to a hospital and you see somebody dying. Maybe it can happen when you're driving on the road and you see an accident taken place there. It can happen at any point of time. Maybe it can happen when you see a policeman catching you and you suddenly feel afraid about what he's going to do to you. So this fear, small incidents of fear that happen at various points of time,
And then they go on piling
go
up.
on piling up in a suppressed way.
Right.
You keep on trying to control them and suppress them. And then you need to go somewhere and release those fears. Now, that somewhere generally may not happen in normal life. So, where would you go? You would go into a controlled scene, a controlled environment in which there is a theater and there is a projector and there is a screen. When part of your head knows that that is not real, part of your head knows that this is only a screen, and yet the universal truths that are being shown over there kind of make you relate with those truths. They make you feel one with those emotions, and your suppressed emotions are allowed to be released in that environment.
So that means probably we are moving from sympathy to empathy at
Yes.
that stage, probably.
Yes,
if I'm
yes,
not making
yes,
mistake.
exactly.
You start relating yourself with that character,
Yes.
and your suppressed feelings, when you see on the screen the hero or the heroine facing some kind of problem, maybe crying, start crying, you also start feeling that actually you are crying
Crying.
and you are being relieved at that time.
At that time, exactly.
And that is why it is healthy.
And this
Art
is why
healthy.
this is why art is healthy, and this is what makes you feel that after you have watched, for example, after you have watched the Titanic, you come out of the theater feeling relief, feeling a sense of hush, that now I have expressed myself. Thank God that I am alive in my life. In fact, this is a very important, interesting point of view, actually, because many times we go to watch these romantic films in Bollywood, and though this is not directly what Aristotle is talking about, but it's an interesting concept that our students could think of, that when we go to watch these romantic films in Bollywood, in which there is a very handsome hero and a very beautiful heroine, we go there and we start relating with those heroes and heroines. If you have noticed, sir, there are very few Bollywood films in which there is no love angle. Every film generally has a love angle. Now, why do you... I was thinking, why does this happen? And I realized that our Indian society does not
Talk about love
very openly.
openly.
We are a conservative society, especially a society in places like Ahmedabad and other cities in Gujarat. We are a society in which we tend to hesitate in talking about love, or we don't go out on dates with other boys and girls. There are a certain class of people who do that, but the majority does not. And when you have these needs or these feelings, of course, everybody is as a normal person would have a curiosity of knowing what is really love, or what is really the feeling of going out with a boy or going out with a girl. And you tend to have those feelings. Now, when you have these feelings and you're not allowed to express them publicly or as often as you have them,
I think students must be facing this kind of problem
All
at this
the
age,
time,
probably.
all the time.
Yes, so they could relate this idea very well.
yes, and when you feel these things, what do? How do you express them? You feel able to express them when you see, for example, the character of Shah Rukh Khan falling in love with the character of Kajol in Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. So you tend to feel, oh, my suppressed emotions are expressed when these characters are meeting each other, and when these characters fall in love with each other on the screen. Though I am not falling in love with anybody, I am not doing any of the things that they are doing, but when they are doing it, I tend to feel a sense of relief. I tend to feel a sense of relaxation. I tend to feel this effect of catharsis. And it is this that Aristotle talked about centuries ago.
Probably students must be also relieved. They must have some kind of suppressed emotion, fear about Aristotle and catharsis and all these things.
Yes.
But after listening
hope
you,
so.
probably I think number of suppressed emotions must have been vomited out by them, and they are
I
relieved at the end
definitely
of the
hope so.
lecture.
I hope that this lecture helps them not to be afraid of Aristotle, because after all, as you can see, Aristotle came to defend exactly what we have been talking about. Aristotle has come to the defense of art. Aristotle has come to the defense of what you and I are all studying since so many years. He says that art is real because art is a matter of perception. It is not a matter of historical and factual data, it is a matter of perception. Art is true because art is a matter of art expresses through mimesis. It holds the mirror up to nature. It talks about a representation of a general truth, not of a particular truth. It talks about a truth which is universal and complete. And then he says that art is healthy because it is cathartic in nature, because it allows you a certain kind of a release, a certain kind of a relief after you have seen or watched or read a play or a movie or a poem. I often like to give an example when I go to the classroom of movies that we watch.
Okay.
And because Aristotle has talked so much about plays and drama, I somehow tend to relate it a little bit with movie and film. Now, let's imagine, for example, that a student has gone to watch, or we have gone to watch a film which is full of violence and full of bloodshed. A film like Bombay, for example, in
Okay.
which there was riots and there was bleeding and a lot of negative things happening. And you go into a theater and you watch this film for 3 hours, and while you watch this film, I'm sorry, you are completely involved for that particular time in all the negative emotions that the screen is showing you. So you can see the bloodshed,
Sure.
and you can see people killing each other and parts of the body which are thrown here and there, and you feel the horror and the pain and the tragedy of this whole human existence that you see around you. You don't know what is the solution to this. Even the hero doesn't come out of it victorious, and you don't know what should a common person like me do with this kind of a reality. In fact, people in Ahmedabad and in Gujarat should not be very they should know this reality of the riots very well, because we have seen them firsthand. We have noticed how things take place in this society that we live in, how fickle the mob is, and how easily people tend to kill each other nowadays in these times that we live in. So when you watch a film like this, you go into the theater and you come out of it after 3 hours. As you come out of the theater, you look at the roads that you're walking on, you look at your parking lot, you look at your own vehicle, which may not really be the perfect vehicle, and you try starting it and driving the vehicle on the road. You see the different rickshaws, and you see the different routine life that is going on. The shopkeepers have their own shops, and life is going on routinely. And as you see these things, you tend to feel a sense of calm, a sense of relief. Why is there a relief? The relief is because you feel, thank God, my life is not like what I saw in the film. Thank God, my life doesn't have bloodshed and killing and death. Thank God that routine life is going on around me. And this catharsis that has taken place makes you feel calm, makes you feel relief. On the other hand, Imagine that you've gone to see a movie like a romantic film. I'm sure students have seen the movie Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. And as you watch this film, you see that there is the best of cars and the most beautiful scenery and the most beautiful heroine and the most handsome hero, and you feel everything is so perfect in that world. And then after 3 hours of watching that film, when you come out on the road and you see open gutters, roads dug up, people spitting, traffic chaotic, you go on the roads, your vehicle does not start with one attempt, you start hoping and wishing that you had the kind of cars that were seen in the movie, you start wishing you had the kind of money that people had in the film, and that's when you realize that your life is not perfect as you saw in the film. And so often it happens that many times the film which has the negative ideas expressed makes you feel more positive when you come out of it, whereas the film which shows you a imaginary romantic world makes you feel a different kind of feeling when you are faced with your reality. And all of these are connected somehow with Aristotle's ideas of perception, mimesis, and catharsis. If you look at it, if you try and think about it, I'm sure you will understand what Aristotle was really trying to say.
So, madam, last thing on your screen, Aristotle discusses many other aspects of art and aestheticism in the Poetics. Two ideas, art for art's sake and art for life's sake. The definition and construct of a tragedy, the dramatic unities, three unities, remember, unity of plot, character and action have been taken care in the book, The Poetics. We are very much happy, madam, that the most difficult subject, most difficult writer, critic, you made very easy, very interesting for our students to chew it, digest it, because you went on adding some live practical examples, wonderful recipe you exhibited to understand, digest and enjoy Aristotle. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, students.
Sandhan. All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.